Glory, a song performed by rapper Common and John Legend. It was a theme song from the 2014 film Selma, which portrayed the 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches. In early 1965, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Southern Christian Leadership Conference made Selma, Alabama, the focus of its efforts to register black voters in the South. The historic march from Selma to Montgomery and King's participation in it greatly helped raise awareness of the difficulty faced by black voters in the South and the need for a Voting Rights Act passed later that year. A social justice issue that we continue to work on this day. Martin Luther King Jr., who said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Metropolitan Community Church mission is to respond to issues of injustice in our world. We, as Christians, have a responsibility to protect the vulnerable and address such problems as hunger and homelessness, racism and poverty, inequality and gun violence. We join with communities everywhere this day to mourn the death this past week of Corey Jones, a 31-year-old musician in Palm Beach Gardens, and Randolph Holder, a 33-year-old New York police officer. Will you pray with me, please? God of justice, voices from all faith and traditions are calling us to a justice-based accountability. May we have hearts of compassion and commitment to advocate for basic human rights and justice. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered a message to the world that the correlation between love and justice is undeniable, and he preached that justice at its best is love. Love is a voice that tells us never to give up on the aspirations of you for justice. And it is this love of justice that calls us to action for the life and dignity of your people, God. Touch our hearts that we may be faithful witnesses and effective voices for justice. God of mercy, hear our prayer. Amen. We live like animals in cramped houses. It's a difficult thing to come to the realization how little you mean to the people you are working for. We are demanding a dignified life for ourselves. We want the right to work without slavery and sexual harassment. So these are words from farm workers of the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. Picture on your screen there. That we heard in the showing of the Food Chains movie here this past Monday night. What is social justice? It may be defined as the way in which human rights are manifested in the everyday lives of people at every level of society. What is social justice? It may be defined as promoting a just society by challenging injustice and valuing diversity. You see, it exists when all people share a common humanity and therefore have a right to equitable treatment, support for their human rights, and a fair allocation of community resources. Social justice work is about confronting institutions that systematically create inequity and produce needs. Coming together across lines of race, religion, and ethnicity makes justice issues matters of human rights and not the exclusive problem of one marginalized minority. So we are called to love through peace building and justice making. This is the spirituality of ancient prophets and modern day mystics. Prophets such as Isaiah, who we heard from this morning, He called on the Israelites to protect the widowed and orphaned and counter social injustice. When Jesus preached his first sermon, he quoted Isaiah 61, declaring that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus was declaring that he understood himself not only in the line of the prophets, but sent to seek justice. We, you and I, must reclaim our prophetic heritage. You know, the church is at its best when it is engaged in the work of transformation. Yes. Social justice ministry speaks on behalf of those who live on the margins, giving a voice to those whose cries are not heard, and bringing permanent relief to those who are suffering. The church is obligated to take seriously the church's walks with Jesus as it seeks to model his ministry by living out the biblical mandate to do justice based on our reading today in Luke. If we are the church of Jesus Christ, then it only makes sense that God's people model the mission and ministry of Christ. That is, the church ought to be about justice because Jesus is about justice. Amen?
Amen.
At MCCPB, our strategic plan says that we are a human rights church focused on social justice for all creation. We actively seek equality, justice, and peace. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? MCC recognizes a state of need around the world in the areas of human rights and justice. As people of faith, we have a responsibility to act on behalf of those who cannot affect change on their own. MCC is known as the Human Rights Church. For we are called as Christians to stand in solidarity with those who are marginalized and oppressed, to be partners in working for change, to be witnesses who call attention to human rights abuses, to be a voice in the international community for justice. An MCC's strategic plan, breakthrough objective for justice, is to claim our prophetic roles as a justice movement for the 21st century. Priority actions for our denomination are to increase MCC presence at justice events around the world, to expand our Global Justice Institute, to train congregations in human rights advocacy work, and to strengthen MCC faith-based social justice action and activism. Guiding principles for our social justice ministry is that education should lead to awareness and action. That is what this Sunday is about. Another principle is to collaborate, because collaboration is an essential part of justice ministry. And what I've learned in social justice work is that social justice is about heart, it's about hope, it's about courage, and it's about dignity.
Yes.
In preparing for the sermon this week, I learned a lot from Robert Lupton's book, Toxic Charity, and from Chris Sade in his book, Second Wave, Spiritual Passion for Peace, Passion for Justice. And Kathy will read a poem of Chris at the end of this service. See, social justice ministry is much broader than charity alone, they say. Everyone can give charity and feel good about themselves. Doing justice is more demanding. Charity gives us a sense of generosity and benevolence to a person in need. Charity is a reaction in order to supply a need based on someone's lack in life. Charity is essential, but of itself is not adequate for meeting the person's needs or the needs of the group that the person represents. See, in contrast, they say, justice seeks to maintain a system of equality without partiality. It seeks right treatment. See, unlike charity alone, justice is not limited to reacting in order to fill a material need such as food. Justice seeks right, systemic relationships from the beginning. You know, they tell us social justice focuses on basic causes of oppression, inequity, and disenfranchisement. It seeks to change public policy and public priorities. It works to empower people to take initiatives in ways that are positive and constructive. The movement for social justice understands that oppressed people have strengths and skills and cultural assets and the responsibility to act together for their own common good. While charity reacts to its environment to create soup kitchens to feed the hungry, justice seeks to adjust the social and political environment to eliminate the need for soup kitchens in the first place. Amen? Amen. And to ask this question, why is there hunger?
All right.
Both justice and charity are essential to the work of churches. Until the day comes when charity becomes a necessary, efforts must be made that include both charity and justice. You know, two organizations that we have been supporting with our time, talent, and treasure over the past 2 years at MCCPB is the Coalition of Immokalee Workers and Habitat for Humanity, who are doing social justice work. Their work is about heart, it's about hope, it's about courage and dignity. You see, the CIW is a worker-based human rights organization, internationally recognized for its achievements in the fields of social responsibility, human trafficking, and gender-based violence at work. It was built on a foundation of farm worker community organizing, starting in 1993. In 2011, CIW launched their Fair Food program. It was a groundbreaking model for worker-driven social responsibility, dignity, based on unique partnership among farm workers, Florida tomato growers, and participating retail buyers, including Subway and Whole Foods and Walmart. Under the Fair Food program, food agreements in which participating buyers commit to buy Florida tomatoes only from growers in good standing with the Fair Food program, and to cease purchases from growers who have failed to comply with the Code of Conduct. The United Nations Working Group of Business and Human Rights has described the Fair Food program model as a smart mix of tools that could serve as a model elsewhere in the world. And this started right here in Florida, miles away in Immokalee. The Fair Food program represents a win-win for workers, growers, and retailers. Workers receive protection of their human rights in the workplace and increased wages. Some of you who went to Immokalee with me? Stand up. Stand up. You went to Immokalee, that's it. Thank you. And now, Habitat for Humanity. It is about heart and about hope and about courage and dignity. You saw a picture of us in the New Dimensions, and now you will see a little video of a project that we engaged in this year, the Women Build Project, that was filmed by Carmen Morgan. You know, we put up hugs, and actually those are placed for safety when people are working on the roof. So those of you that were involved in the Women Bill, will you please stand? Habitat for Humanity of Palm Beach County works to provide decent, safe, affordable housing to hard-working families who may not otherwise have the opportunity to own homes. Their goal is to strengthen the community as a whole. Habitat for Humanity is a home ownership program that empowers families to build a new life for themselves through the stability and security of owning their own home. Habitat homes are not given away, but are sold to families who qualify and are willing to put in hundreds of hours of sweat, equity, labor, dignity, empowerment, and to make a monthly mortgage payment. Habitat homes are affordable because Habitat does not make a profit. The homes are sold with a no-interest loan, and the homes are built mostly by volunteers. Selected families are partners with Habitat. They contribute a minimum of 400 hours of labor on their own home and on the homes of other Habitat families. Homeowners also participate in a series of classes designed to prepare them for the responsibilities of home ownership. And they tell us they've been so successful in the education that there has been maybe just one foreclosure over the many hundreds of houses that they've been building. Habitat for Humanity of Palm Beach County has also home preservation programs. Some of us helped a month ago with this project. These programs are a part of our neighborhood revitalization initiative, which serves more families with an expanded array of products, services, and partnerships, empowering, get this word, empowering residents to revive their neighborhoods and enhance their quality of life. And Habitat is really looking for now to revitalize communities and building around communities, not just a single home. So what can our church do, and what can our church do that might be a little bit different? New ideas for MCCPB that may have our food pantry looking a bit different. You see, the Food Security for America is a nonprofit based in Atlanta, and it assists churches and other community groups in establishing food co-ops, replacing food pantries that offer free food. The Food Security organizes food buying clubs that leverage the $3 biweekly dues to each low-income member to purchase $30 worth of surplus food. You see, we are about heart and hope and courage and dignity, empowering those being served, improving the local quality of life, relieving poverty, and changing the lives of participants. What might our Christmas toy collection look like this year? Stay tuned to know what our Christmas fair will be all about. And trust me, it will be about heart and hope and courage and dignity. Reverend Leah asked the connection groups the question, is there a social justice cause that is near and dear to your heart? If so, what can you see yourself doing to work on that cause as part of your spiritual journey? So I'm going to ask, strategically, or whatever, we placed many signs around this sanctuary and outside in the hallway. And so I'd ask those of you that are sitting next to these signs, if you can shout out what you read, it's in big print, bold, all right? What is read on the signs of opportunities of work that needs to be done? Let me hear.
Education.
Worker justice.
Social.
Environmental concerns.
Racial justice.
Worker justice.
Civil and human rights.
LGBT.
Environmental concerns.
LGBT.
Thank you. I want to end with a story about how I learned a little bit more in understanding of charity and social justice, about the work that is about heart and hope and courage and dignity. Many of you know that I have a full-time job as a laboratory director, and I've been a laboratory professional for 40 years this month. Praise God. Started when I was 5. And so, as my life has been all about volunteering, I had volunteered, as I do at this church, as clergy here, but as a laboratory professional in a professional organization for over 25 years. And during that time, was involved in the organization in many committees, and one of the things that I did a lot was give workshops and lectures and around the specialty that I know, hematology, and about lab management, and did it all around the country. And so there was a time that this organization had the opportunity to work for the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, when they got funds from the PEPFAR initiative. So that was the President's Initiative for AIDS Relief, to help build laboratory capacity in Africa, to help monitor patients receiving antiretrovirals for HIV, AIDS, the pandemic that is in Africa. So here's where I understand the difference between charity and social justice. Initially, when we met with the World Health Organization and CDC and the organization and people, we talked about it, and we had thought that what we would do, because we had many materials that many of us have taught all around the country, that we would somehow repackage these lectures that we had given in the United States, and then we would send it to the countries so that they could learn and build their laboratory capacity. But that's not what happened. When we started meeting, and the first group that we were meeting with were representatives from Ethiopia. They actually came to the United States, and what they were asking us is that to come down to their country and help them develop their teaching materials. And together with all the stakeholders, with the people from in-country, with the laboratory professionals in-country, and from the laboratory professionals and organizations in the U.S., that we would come together and to create the teaching materials. So we did. And then we came back home. And then we made up all the training materials, and we went back in country. And again, the first country that we had visited was Ethiopia. And so we began to train the trainers. You see, it was all about not giving them a fish, but teaching them to fish. And after we trained them, we went home, and then we went back. And we went back to observe the trainers training. You see, it's all about dignity, because they could do it. It's all about sustainability. And the relationships that we made and the communication was all about heart. ate their food with them, we danced with them. We shared our lives with them. And we helped one another. Learned about how God is so much bigger. So I had the opportunity to go to Ethiopia and Tanzania and Guyana and Haiti. And the power for me to go to Haiti, which is just 90 miles away. When I started work and in the early 80s, when HIV was before HIV and AIDS, and we were working in our hematology lab, and what was happening in our hospital, and I was working down at Jackson Memorial, is that we were getting young Haitian males coming to our ICU and dying, and no one knew why. So interestingly enough, unbeknownst to us, they were collecting blood specimens and bringing them to our hematology laboratory, and we would run the results, and they said, you have to get it done by 12 noon because we had to send them to CDC, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. We thought we were doing something on med students or some research study. Later on, we knew that we were testing early on for what now is known as HIV/AIDS. So for me to go back 30 years later to help those to build laboratory capacity on a disease that's pandemic in Africa, and that it's all around the world, was very powerful. We know that there are still far ways to go for equal rights, especially for people of all sexual and gender identities. There's still a far ways to go for women, people of color, people with disabilities, all people who are marginalized, people with HIV and AIDS in Africa, in Haiti, in the US, here, right here in this church, to get rid of the stigma. You and I can make a choice, focusing on heart, on hope, and dignity. We can strive every day, beginning today, for social justice and change for a better world. We must open our hearts a little more and deepen our passion for something greater. We must hope that change, though slow, will happen. We must have courage to step out of our comfort zone and take risks to end oppression and inequality by instigating, inspiring, and participating in acts of justice. We must create partnerships and embrace one's dignity, that is, validating the other person's existence and being, like the Treasure Coast Fair Food Program who visited us this Monday and in support of the CIW, Coalition of Immokalee Workers, and Habitat for Humanity. With heart, hope, courage, and dignity, we will move toward a more just world. Yes. And when it's all said and done, we will cry glory. Let me hear it. Glory. 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 Amen.
Amen.